My guest is the former pastor of the church in question, City's Church in St. Paul. He is a prolific author. His latest book, Leadership and the Sin of Empathy, and he serves as a Fellow of Theology at the Master of Divinity Program and the Master of Divinity Program Director at Greyfriars Hall at New St. Andrew's College in Moscow, Idaho. He's also the Associate Pastor at Christ Church in Moscow. Please welcome to the program Pastor Joe Rigney, former pastor at City's Church.
Thanks for having me, Larry. Appreciate to be on here.
Pastor, thank you very much for joining me. When you heard about this group of anti-protesters barging in on a church service at your former church, what was your reaction?
I was shocked. We were actually in church out here in Idaho, and I helped to plant this church about 11 years ago. This was actually the 11th anniversary of the church was this last Sunday, and so my wife and I were beginning to get text messages from people we know saying there's something happening at your old church. And then when you come out and you find out what it is, and that people have brazenly and in a coordinated way, not an overflow of a protest that got out of hand, but a deliberate, intentional plan with media involvement, invaded in the middle of a service, gone in, sat down, listened to the first half of the service, and then all of a sudden, after a prayer, stand up and began shouting slogans, yelling at the congregants, frightening children, intimidating everybody in sight. It was quite frankly shocking. And so then as I saw it unfold and more video begins to come out of just the chaos I was appalled. Although I was encouraged by the pastor of the church, who's a friend of mine, seeing him stand there and say, shame on you, to those who would disrupt the worship of God on a Sunday morning, to answer hostile questions from Don Lemon saying, isn't this a great example of people's First Amendment rights? They're just exercising their First Amendment rights. No, they're disrupting the exercise of First Amendment rights. The First Amendment protects the right to gather, to assemble, freedom of religion. And these people are saying, no, you don't get to do that on Sunday morning because we're going to intrude politics into your worship service in order to intimidate you, in order to frighten you, in order to scare anyone connected in any way with law enforcement. So it was appalling. And I'm grateful that now some of those folks have been arrested. And I hope that we continue to see more, even what Hakeem Jeffries said there. That's one of the first times I've seen a Democratic politician just flat out condemn, this is off limits. Whatever disagreements we may have, this is off limits.
I think it's probably the first time I've ever agreed with Hakeem Jeffries. We have a lot to talk about, Pastor, but first, allegedly, the pastor is a member of ICE or somehow is affiliated with ICE. Whether that's true or not is irrelevant, but is it true?
Yeah, one of the lay elders of the church is in law enforcement. He works for ICE. He's worked for ICE for over 20 years through multiple administrations. He's a faithful man. He's a husband. He's a father. He's a really good man. And he every day he goes to work, puts his life on the line in order to remove violent criminals from the streets, rapists, murderers. That's why he does it. He wants to keep people safe. He wants to love his neighbors, and he does it with professionalism and character. And then this was an escalation, as we've seen these agitators seek to hinder law enforcement in the carrying out of their duties. That wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to protest at a government building. It wasn't enough to hinder law enforcement when they're out there. Instead, no, we're going to follow you to church. We're going to figure out where you go to church, and then we're going to go and we're going to intimidate your family. We're going to try to frighten your children. That's what this was about, and it's absolutely beyond the.
Have you spoken with him?
I've not spoken with the lay pastor. I have spoken with the senior pastor who's been in many of the videos, and was interactive. So I've spoken with him, and at this point, they put out a statement a few days ago, condemning this, reiterating the mission of their church, which is the mission of hundreds and thousands of churches across this country. We want to worship Jesus, spread the gospel, love our neighbors. That's what this church is about. It's not a political church. There's not a political rally being held there. So they've reiterated that. And, largely they're just trying to care for their flock and then prepared. Is this over? Is it going to happen again? Mm-hmm. Is the left going to continue to escalate in this way? So they're trying to care for their flock. And so I'm hopeful that maybe we've reached a tipping point and people will step back from that ledge. You
probably have heard the Attorney General, Keith Ellison, say that, well, these people had a First Amendment right to do what they did, even though it appears to be a violation of both federal law and Minnesota law.
That's correct. And the idea, I mean, I just can't imagine a state official saying, what's in bounds now. I mean, if this was any other kind of church, like if this was a black church and a group of white supremacists came in, not to harm anybody, but just to yell and intimidate, do you think that Gavin Newsom would have heard about it? Do you think that Hakeem Jeffries would be so nonchalant about it? Of course not. Of course not. They'd recognize it if it was people on their side. But all of a sudden, because this guy's in law enforcement, all of a sudden, not only him, but anybody associated with him is fair game on a Sunday morning. That's just absolutely ridiculous. I've also seen other legislators in Minnesota actually say this was essential to the cause, and it will continue. So calls from legislators to continue to do it. Obviously, one of the women who was leading the agitation, the invasion, was a member of the St. Paul School Board. So this is elected officials who think this is now in bounds in America to harass people and disrupt the worship of God for these political purposes.
Pastor, we only have about 30 seconds left in this segment. Can you imagine these anti-ICE protesters doing this at, say, a mosque?
Absolutely not. There's no way, no how that they would ever do that, something like that. It's a unique assault on the rule of law and the Christians who are insisting that the law be enforced.
Pastor, are we at a new level of protest in America where people feel brazen enough to barge into a church service and begin protesting? I've not seen that before. Have you?
I've not seen it before, but what I have seen, I think we've seen this over the last 10, 20 years, is escalating collisions between conservative Christians and wider leftist America. And so whether we're talking about legal harassment, if someone won't bake a cake celebrating a gay wedding, things like that. So you've got the lawfare dimension of this. But I think even in the last few years, whether it was the trans shooting in Nashville of a Christian school, last year in Minnesota, another trans individual shot up a Catholic mass. And so I think churches in this day and age have had to adjust and think we need to have a security plan. But I think it's largely centered on shooters, on an active shooting situation. This was a different kind of thing because it was a large crowd of people. It was planned and coordinated for media exposure. It was loud. It was proud. It wasn't done in a corner. It was designed to get on the news. So I do think it's an escalation in our context. But quite frankly, I take courage and comfort from the scriptures. This is the sort of thing that does happen in the Bible. The book of Acts is filled with this sort of thing: riots, mobs, threats against Christian leaders, government complicity or encouragement or ineptitude in the face of it. So this is not new in the history of Christianity. And I think that's a great comfort for us as Christians to be able to say we've been here before, and we should seek God's help to do for us what he did in the early church, which was to strengthen them, to continue to preach the word of God with boldness, to stand firm, to love their neighbors. That's what we need to do as Christians. But it is unprecedented, I think, in recent American history.
Pastor, I suspect that most of these people who were protesting had not set foot in a church in years, so maybe that's the silver lining. But I want to ask you about this. About a third of Americans said that they wished the would-be assassin in Butler, Pennsylvania had been successful. This is not the way Christians think. Christians don't think like that, don't reason like that. I believe a lot of the hatred towards one side, toward the other, comes from a perspective of people who are not Christians, do not understand that Christians do not hate the way that side, in my opinion, hates our side. We think that they're wrong, ill-informed, maybe indoctrinated, but we don't hate. The other side, I believe, I'm not speaking for every single person, obviously, but the other side has a large number of people that literally hate you because of the way you think and hate you because you voted for Donald Trump.
I do think that there is a fundamental difference. I think that's a hard thing for some Christians to accept. I think a lot of Christians would really like it to live in a country where there's a common moral foundation, there's a common culture and a common faith that underlies it. And then our political debates are over marginal tax rates and things like that, what size of government we should have or things. But we're not in that kind of situation. We're in a fundamental worldview collision between those who want to promote lawlessness, who think that borders are optional, who think that unborn children can be slaughtered in the womb, that men can become women and women can become men, that we can trans the kids. That's one side. And then there's another side that believes, as in the entirety of Western civilization is embraced for 2,000 years, that God is God, that he made us male and female, that unborn life should be protected, that borders are good, that law should be enforced. And so it is really difficult to have normal political debates when the differences are that stark. And so at one level, this is what I've been saying all week long, is that there really is a choice before us. It's Christ or chaos. That is the fundamental choice facing America today, is will we turn to Christ? Will we turn back to the Lord, back to God? Will we humble ourselves before him, repent of our sins, accept his forgiveness? And then from there, I think we can have fruitful political debates about various governmental things or political things. All of that's in bounds. But if we don't do that, then what we're going to continue to see is increasing lawlessness, increasing chaos, increasing disorder, increasing hostility, because that's what human beings do apart from the grace of God.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm old enough, Pastor, to remember 1984, a conservative, every bit as conservative as Donald Trump on the fiscal side, won re-election 49 states to 1. The only one he lost is Minnesota. He lost that by a few thousand votes. Can you imagine a country where somebody like Donald Trump wins 49 states and only loses 1? How far have we gone from that time in American history, Pastor?
It's absolutely true. And I think it is rooted in an abandonment of God. Like when you turn away from God, nothing holds together. And what we're seeing today is as a result, you have the chaos in the streets. We have the chaos that Minnesota's been through it. I was there in 2020 after George Floyd died and the riots took over. Every gas station within 2 miles of my house was burned to the ground. We had to drive and far away to even just get gas, and you couldn't go to certain neighborhoods because they were no-go zones. And so this is an increasing tactic, and it's almost entirely on the left. You don't, after Charlie Kirk was assassinated last fall by a leftist, because like Stephen in the book of Acts, he was an evangelist who wanted to honor God, who wanted to call people to Christ, leave a legacy, have kids, rebuild your country. That was his message, and that was intolerable. And so a leftist assassinated him. But after that, what did Christians do? Did we riot in the streets? Did we take to the streets to assault people? Did we go to liberal churches, to progressive churches, and demand that they denounce anybody associated with the LGBTQ movement? Of course not. What did we do? We gathered to pray. We gathered to have worship services. We gathered to honor God, to thank him for the gift of Charlie Kirk, and then to get back to the normal everyday work of raising our families and educating our children and seeking the good of our neighbors, because that's what Christians do. And so this really is, again, a fundamental choice about which direction America will go. And I'm hopeful and I'm praying, as all Christians are around the country, that God would be kind to us, and he would pour out grace and mercy upon us so that we would turn back to him and we would avert the disaster that we seem to be heading towards.
Pastor, we have about 2 minutes left. Thank you so much for joining me. I can't quite remember exactly how Tim Kaine, the former vice presidential candidate, phrased it, but somebody was talking about America being a Christian nation founded in Judeo-Christian values, and he said, no, that's a theocracy. He got hammered and began backing away from it. But for the man who almost became vice president to not understand that America is a Christian nation founded upon Judeo-Christian values was just jaw-dropping.
Yeah, absolutely. We absolutely were. The founding fathers were overwhelmingly Christian, and they were the kind of Christians who believed things, who believed in fundamental moral order in the universe. They could leave room for denominational. They didn't want to fight over, are you a Baptist, are you a Presbyterian, are you an Anglican? That was not what they wanted to fight about. But they did want a country, as John Adams said, our Constitution was built for a moral and religious people. It's unfit for any other kind. And so this is the challenge before us, is we have these amazing governing documents that we've twisted and corrupted. At least the left has twisted and corrupted over the last 200 years. But we have these amazing documents. But what kind of people are we? What kind of people are we? Are we the kind of people who tolerate disruptions of worship services or law enforcement activity? Are we the type of people who kill our children? Are we the type of people who seek to mutilate our children? What kind of people are we as Americans? And I think that's, again, the question that we have to ask. What kind of people will we be? Will we be God-honoring, God-fearing people, or will we follow the left into the abyss?
We have 20 seconds left. Answer your own question, Pastor. What do you think?
I am hopeful. I got to say that, Larry. I am hopeful that God will pour out his mercy. He's done it before. There have been revivals. There have been awakenings in this country. There have been those things to bring us back from the edge. And so I'm hopeful that God will do it, and every Christian should continue to pray that he does.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.